Bad Luck Charlie Short Story Podcast production by Lynn Dave. Episode 10. The, quote, helpful, end quote, newspaper reporter. Charlie's hopes of finding Janet were dashed the second he realized that the expert Otto promised was none other than Greg the newspaper guy, a man whose main talent seemed to be scribbling irrelevant articles and delivering gossip like it was front-page news. Greg adjusted his oversized, thick glasses and struck a dramatic pose, clearly delighted to be in the spotlight. "Now, Charlie," he began, twirling a pen like it was a magical wand, "I can help you find Janet, but first, I need to get some background information. Can't help it if we don't get the full story, you know. Can't help if we don't get the full story." Charlie groaned, realizing that this was going nowhere fast, but Greg was already deep into his questioning, as if he were hosting some grand investigative press conference. "All right," Greg continued, squinting his eyes as if this were the interview of his career. "Let's start with the basics. How long have you known Janet? A year, 2, 3? And in all this time, has she ever mentioned a secret hideaway or a location she might flee to in a time of duress?" Charlie ran a hand over his face, exasperated. "Greg, she was kidnapped. She didn't flee anywhere. They took her." Greg nodded seriously, taking notes furiously. "Kidnapped, did not flee. Got it. Now, about the mob. Are you close with them? Ever say shared a meal together? Gone bowling? Because if you're buddies, that might give us some leverage here." Otto, leaning against the side of the tent, let out a deep sigh. "Greg, this isn't the time for a Q&A session. We need action, not headlines." "Oh, but headlines are action," Greg retorted, waving his notes. "Once this hits the presses, everyone will be looking for Janet, and in the meantime I can work on an exclusive expose. Local man's fiancée kidnapped by mobsters. Where did she go? People are going to love it." Charlie was about to lose his patience entirely when a tall, solemn figure entered the tent, casting a long shadow. It was the town priest, Father Murphy, clutching a Bible and looking as if he'd just walked out of an old Western movie. "Did someone say there's a lost soul in need of saving?" he asked in a booming voice, gazing around the tent with dramatic intensity. Greg perked up, his eyes shining with excitement. "Why, yes, Father, Janet has been taken by the mob. We were just discussing how to write this up for the newspaper." The priest looked at Greg, unimpressed. "The newspaper? My son, we're talking about a kidnapping, not a bake sale. This calls for divine intervention." He raised his Bible, giving Greg a look that clearly said, "Step aside." Father Murphy moved closer to Charlie, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder. "Fear not, my child. With faith, courage, and perhaps a little cunning, we shall find her." Charlie gave the priest a doubtful look. "And by we, you mean—" The priest's face turned serious. "God and I mostly, but I believe I can work something out with the big man upstairs." "Perfect," Greg chimed in, scribbling again. "I'll title the article, 'Heaven's Hero Saves the Day.' Father, what's your middle initial?" "Silence," Father Murphy boomed, his voice reverberating through the tent. "Now tell me what we know of the situation." Charlie shrugged helplessly. "Not much, Father. I heard they might be holding her at an abandoned roller rink on the outskirts of town, but I've already checked there. They moved her somewhere else." Father Murphy stroked his chin thoughtfully. "The mob is like a snake, slippery, quick, and surprisingly hard to catch, but we shall smite this serpent." Just then a squirrel skittered across the floor of the tent, clutching what appeared to be a piece of tattered map in its tiny claws. It dropped the scrap at Charlie's feet, giving a little chitter before scampering off. Greg squinted, pointing at the scrap of paper. "You see that? That is a sign if I ever saw one. Divine intervention is happening right now." Father Murphy bent down, carefully picking up the piece of paper. He examined it, his brows furrowing. "This looks like the address of the old warehouse near the docks." Charlie's eyes lit up. "Then that's where they must be holding Janet." Father Murphy handed him the map fragment. "Go, Charlie, save your beloved. Greg and I will stay here and alert the townsfolk to keep their eyes open for any suspicious mobsters, and I'll pray for your strength." "Pray fast," Charlie muttered, bolting out of the tent, Otto following close behind. As they left, they heard Greg's excited voice already detailing his next article to Father Murphy. "Manhunt's fiancée against all odds, armed with nothing but love and sheer determination," Greg was saying. "It's practically Pulitzer material." Father Murphy sighed. "Greg, let's just stick to missing fiancée found for now." As Charlie sprinted toward the docks, he felt a strange sense of hope. Sure, his help was a newspaper guy with zero investigative skills and a priest with a flair for drama, but somehow he couldn't help but feel that maybe, just maybe, things would turn out all right. And if not, well, at least they'd have a pretty unforgettable story to tell.